the body keys.
Fun.
Uh, I don't want to say anything of my interpretation of this. This is your work, and what we want is to hear it from the creator.
Wow. Okay. Well, it will be my pleasure to share a bit about the body keys with you and everyone who's joined us. And what I'm most excited about ultimately is to enter into a conversation on this topic and any questions that come up as I'm delivering. So
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone to feel free to post questions as they come up. And I can't see any of that. So Jill, I'll trust you to field
Yeah,
whatever's relevant.
I will. Facebook doesn't always show me the
Okay.
comments. Diane, Nina, Lydiana, Karen from the Party of Nine is with us.
Oh, so fun.
so we've got an audience with us already.
Okay, wonderful. Worst case scenario, if we miss any questions or comments, we'll go back after the call and respond to them by text. But for now, I guess we get started, and any questions that come up are, I'm open to anything. So
yes.
Yeah. All right. So let's begin with just a brief description of what the body keys even is.
Yes.
And well, it's always fun to describe this. Since I'm the creator, I feel like it adapts itself a little bit every time. But the body keys essentially is a system that has been developed through me that allows us to identify the natural mechanisms that each of our individual bodies applies in order to return to a natural state of elegant composure or relaxation, even during moments of intense stress or tension. So really the system is a way of addressing those times when we feel stuck inside, whether that stuckness is mental, emotional, or in every case, amazingly physical. There are these natural mechanisms built into our genetic structure, these ways that our body just inherently knows to release tension and return to the ground, return to relaxation. And so one of the most exciting things that we learn through this system is actually something that I'll share with you 100% for free right now on this call, which is simply that our natural state is in fact to be completely relaxed and open. And this is a huge realization because we've kind of been programmed to meet life defensively. Most of us have developed layers and layers and layers of defense systems that, in fact, dissociate us from our own experience. They alienate us from life itself. And so we walk around carrying all of this armor, and our muscles get tired. We become fatigued as a result of this constant state of alert defense. And the body keys helps to at least propose the idea that this is not the most optimal or efficient way to move through our lives. That if we are going to thrive as we are meant to, I believe that all of us are here to thrive.
Yeah.
We must return to this state of our original nature, which is that childlike, limber, curious, open state of relaxation. And so the body keys helps to deliver two things primarily. I like to refer to it as a map and a toolkit.
Yeah.
It's a map in that it develops a profile of you, the individual, that helps us to understand how you've been built and which of these particular mechanisms are most prominent in your experience, which of these mechanisms you can lean into in those moments of tension. And as a result of that, as a result of illuminating that map of how you work, you arrive at this toolkit basically, so that when you find yourself, beating your head against that wall of tension or stress or anxiety, that feeling of stuckness inside, you have some things to do. Because isn't that the big question when we feel stuck? Instantly our head starts spinning. How do I get away from this? How do I fix it? What do I do? What can I do? And the body keys seeks to serve that question with an embodied response.
Because it's not about changing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get it, Jill. It's not
Yeah,
about changing, developing, or even improving. It's about returning. It's about remembering. It's about relaxing. All these rewords, it's fairly profound to consider that all of this work we've done to develop and to become, it's like this upward trajectory. It's actually a downward trajectory that allows for the eventual growth of the foliage. So what we're returning to is the root system,
yeah,
and trusting that if we can plant that root system in fertile soil, that there will be plenty of fruits born as a result of that.
yeah.
Rather than trying to, duct tape artificial fruit to a wimpy tree.
I love that.
I've never said that before, but that's hilarious.
It really is. And I mean, I've I've had my body keys profile, and in fact, I've got a question from the audio,
Perfect.
and the I've got to tell everyone it's the most beautiful experience. The welcome video, where you're outdoors by that beautiful stream in the
Yeah.
woods, and then the audio where you took me for a walk.
Yes.
And something that really occurred to me in listening, and when you said that you were visiting a friend and she got overwhelmed in a project, and she started tidying up her desktop, doing it instinctively, and the thought that immediately occurred to me was, I've done that in the past, and then been hard on myself
Mm-hmm.
and saw it not as what it was really doing, but as avoiding
Right.
doing the project, and almost berating myself for that distraction
Yeah.
to actually return to who I am.
Right. Remarkable, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah. So we do this all the time. And this is a part of what I hope to address with the system of the body keys, which, by the way, is new and developing. So it's
yeah,
it's still growing. I'm still learning through it every single time we have a conversation like this. Every profile that I, have the beautiful opportunity of meeting and preparing. But one thing that I've found over and over again is that ever since childhood, all of us have had very personal ways of addressing these moments where we feel constricted, where we feel worried and stuck, right? Except we've been trained to apply mental attention in a way that is very critical. And so something that for you is in fact an underlying mechanism, a helpful process, is something that you've been taught to label procrastination,
yeah,
right? And so you become critical of yourself when in fact that inner awareness, that greater awareness knows exactly what it's doing and is right, like piercing right just straight through the intensity of that moment to deliver everything you need to return to relaxation. And then you argue with it, and then you make yourself wrong for it, and it's a fully mental game,
mm,
which is why the body keys focuses on specific activities that we can engage in, because it gives the mind something to say, aha, I'll do this. But then we drop into an experience which allows the body to work its magic.
yeah,
It's connecting the dots of these two forms of consciousness in a way that aligns them rather than puts them at war with one another.
yeah. I mean, I actually considered, does procrastination really exist?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's a good question. And it probably comes down to that deeper motivation.
Mm,
Right? What is actually happening? And this is really where I've been focused most recently, is the question of what is it that motivates any action that we take? Now, this question requires a certain sensitivity to subtle layers of intention, but you'll find that certain things are driven from a deep inner knowing and certain things are driven from a somewhat more superficial sense of usually anxiety,
Yeah.
you know. And so we have these ways of moving very naturally in flow with something, and externally speaking, those ways may appear to be, procrastination, or what we might call procrastination, when in fact there's a deeper process unfolding that allows for flow. If we don't, one, know how to feel into that subtlety, that subtlety of motivation, if we don't know how to feel into that space, and if we don't have the courage to trust that deeper knowing, then we spend a lot of time just spinning our wheels on the surface. And so you can begin to get a sense, I'm speaking to our listeners now especially, you can begin to get a sense for how this applies to your work, whatever it is that you're building or contributing or delivering to others. We do spend a lot of time spinning our wheels and lost in those spaces of anxiety and concern over what the other thinks, and on and on it goes. But what we're talking about here is reconnecting to the root of who we are, to the core of who we are, and allowing the totality of who that person is to express him or herself in his or her own way. And that's what we're talking about here. So ultimately, the body keys and everything you just heard Jill describing connects to contribution. It connects to the quality of your presence when you show up, whether it's showing up to dinner with the family, showing up to the grocery store, or showing up to a client call.
Yeah. And it feels so different when you feel that flow.
Yes.
And the way that it expresses itself in not just the way you feel, but the way you speak and the way that you move.
Yes.
And sometimes then somebody comes in and says, but you must do it this way. And then the mind argues that the person says it with such authority that you must go and do it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that response to that authority comes back from being in school.
Yes. It comes from early on. We deprioritize our own knowing, and we deprioritize it to almost anything. I say this very generally speaking. It's a very human problem. Now, I am also aware that the audience that we're speaking to right now is one that is different from the average person. Everyone listening is very intentional about what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. Every one of you has paid very close attention to that quality of your inner position, right? So I would consider this conversation to be existing on a somewhat more advanced level than many of the conversations that I can have with the wider audience. It's fun and special to me that we get to have this conversation in a specialized format. All of you know exactly what Jill has just described. So what we're doing is we're developing a library of resources that we can lean into, that we can depend upon in those moments where we see ourselves kind of getting a little bit off track as a result of all of these old programs. And over time, as we catch that happening and then reorient ourselves, catch it happening and reorient ourselves, in time, that old program is rewritten.
Yeah. But that is the key, isn't it? It still takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I know you've spent a lot of time in what you study and how you develop anything.
Yeah.
That, like you say, everything is intentional. Everything has a purpose. And every word that you speak is really so intentional.
To the best of my ability. Let's say that there is a lot of care and attention brought there on. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Because these things matter.
Yeah. And how long did it take to develop the body keys?
Well, good question. On the one hand, I can't answer it because it's still happening.
Yeah.
Amazingly, it was a year ago last November, so a little more than a year, when it began to come together for me. At the time, I was contemplating relatively advanced application of human design, and I was seeking to understand something that I was beginning to see in the human design body graph and the way that it is structured.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty certain that most of the people listening are at least familiar with the idea of human design. So this is one of those systems that I have been studying for many, many years. And what's amazing to me is that I would say that the body keys was, I like to say that it introduced itself to me, because in this contemplation, certain dots began to connect. But I wasn't trying to build a system. I was learning something in that moment. So I just started to take my notes. And by the time that those notes came together, I saw that there was something happening here, that these connections were not conceptual, that they were leading me to something. And so I took that, and a few weeks later, I visited my family in Ohio. And I had this like comfortable space where I was just like warm and cozy with my family, and I had plenty of like personal space to myself. So I played with that space, and I allowed this contemplation to grow. And I I wrote everything that I was finding on an index card. On index cards, I had index cards mapped all over the floor, and these connections again began to make themselves. And so I kind of followed these breadcrumbs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the process was, let's say by February of 2020, it had really begun to coagulate into something that I could sense as a real offering, as a system that could actually be shared with others. It wasn't just personal, it was something I could contribute. And that felt very exciting, because I had been studying other systems for so long. And the fact that there was now something else coming to life through me without any effort or intention of my own, that was something new. And is, you know, to this day, it's still something very separate from my experience of study and things like this. It felt a bit more like revelation. So I don't say that to artificially elevate the value of the body keys. That's just how the process unfolded for me.
Yeah. And I mean, I love the way you talk about it as a map and tools. But the thing I would like everybody to know is you don't give the whole map laid out and say, this is the map you follow this path, and you know, these are the tools and they're the only tools, and you know, they'll guide you down this path.
Right.
It's so open for the person to play and experiment with, to be curious, to look around the map. It's a whole exploration of, even though it's coming back to us, it feels like wandering into uncharted territory.
Yeah.
And that's just incredibly exciting.
I'm really glad you made a point of saying that, Jill. Thank you. You know, to begin with, when I refer to it as a map, there are two types of maps. And it's fun to consider these two types of maps because it brings me back to the systems that this work is kind of built on the foundation of. And those systems are human design and the gene keys. So human design presents one type of map, and the gene keys presents another. The first type of map is one that I used to work with a lot as a machinist. I don't know, this is, you know, maybe not common knowledge, but I worked as an aerospace precision machinist for almost 10 years. In that world, we worked with blueprints. And so you had a blueprint and you could look down and see how something worked, how it was built. And so a blueprint is one type of map. It maps the workings of something, right?
Yeah.
Another type of map is the kind that you keep in your car, or used to.
Yeah.
You know, and this sort of map helps us to navigate from one place to another. Both are maps, but they have different intentions.
Yeah.
The body keys is very much like human design in that it's mapping. It's more of a blueprint. It's mapping how something works. Okay, all right, so this is what we see when we look inside of you. That's useful. It's not showing us how to get from one place to another like the gene keys does. The gene keys takes us on a journey and it moves from one point to another. It's very sequential in its way of introducing us to ourselves. And I love that about it. You know, it's complementary. But the body keys is not that type of map, as you say, Jill. And then the tools themselves, you know, it's fascinating for me, even to this day, to recognize that there are only 7 body keys. You know, when you're working with human design, you're dealing with thousands upon thousands of potential variables that come to bear on the subject of you. So it's very precise, very personal. The body keys is personal in that you have personally applied these keys your whole life, in many cases without awareness. And it's personal in that I build every profile from scratch for you. It's personal in that I record a personal audio recording for you. None of it is pre-taped. It's something that I wait until there is something authentic to share with you. In some cases, it takes a couple days. In some cases, it takes longer. But it's very personal in that way. At the end of the day, though, we're only dealing with 7 potentials. Some of us have one of them very prominent in our experience. Others of us, like myself, have all of them happening all at once. And so there's all these different lenses that we can learn through. You know, so what I'm referring to as a tool is also a tool of perception. And you get to look back on your experience, or look into your current experience from a whole new angle of perception through a new lens. And that's what Jill is referring to. There's an openness here.
Yeah.
It's not telling you the truth about you. It's saying, hey, look over here. And what do you notice when you do?
Yeah. And it's incredible when you look and you recognize things, and you can look back through your life and you think, wow, that's shown up so many times.
Yes.
And you may have noticed it on some level, but there hasn't been a real conscious understanding of what it means to you.
Right.
And once you consciously go to that level of understanding what it means to you, that changes so much.
Yes.
And it changes the tension.
The word that comes to mind as you speak is self-forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something about it that permits you to accept those parts of yourself that maybe you've been arguing with for a very long time.
Yeah. Even like that, where if you use procrastination, you know, you can look back and say, wow, all those times you weren't procrastinating, that was something absolutely intuitive to what your body needs.
Right.
That is actually moving you from stuckness, and you're moving out of tension. And when you realize that, it is self-forgiveness.
Yes. When you realize it and allow it to reveal itself to you in that way, something inside of you softens.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. And so that's step 1. And then step 2 is to realize that that thing has been serving you all along. It's a part of who you are, and that it's beneficial, in fact. And so then you can begin at this point to make a proactive choice. You can proactively apply these mechanisms as you move forward. That's one of the things that has really impressed me about this system in my own experience of it, is that it really is not just conceptual, nor is it just healing. Absolutely, it's a brilliant concept, I believe. And absolutely, it does heal these layers of, past resentments, these ways that we've disallowed ourselves to be.
Yeah.
But even one step beyond that, we get to enter into the experience of life moving forward in a whole new fashion, with a refined and expanded awareness, and with a new capacity to lean into these mechanisms when we need them. And so at first, we develop this awareness of tension, and we begin to see how we get stuck. And then we apply the body keys. Right?
Yeah.
Because now we have a new tool. And then we watch how this works, and in which ways it does work and in which ways it doesn't work. And we develop an awareness of how we work, right?
Yeah.
And so at first it's about becoming tense and saying, aha, I'm tense. But over time, as we practice and as this sensitivity develops, we actually create a much greater gap between awareness and tension until eventually we don't need to become tense anymore because we have developed or cultivated a way of being in life that supports sustained relaxation. So to me, that's the ultimate end of what's held in this as potential. It's not about fixing brokenness. It's about remembering naturalness. And as we do this more and more and more, we become more and more natural until there's nothing left to do but be.
Yeah. But don't you think that our natural behavior is being taught to us as brokenness?
Unfortunately, I do. Unfortunately, my experience has confirmed what you just said. And what a devastating narrative.
Yeah.
Who you are is not okay.
Mm.
No. Ouch.
I know. And you know, with procrastination, I know I keep going back to that, but what I've noticed for myself since that awareness is if I'm writing something and focused, and then I feel myself turn and look for something else to do, instead of that, oh, you're trying to move away from this. You're trying not to focus and, you know, and work on this. Instead, now it's that awareness of this is normal for me. This is releasing tension. This is going to bring me back to flow in what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah.
And all that stuckness of what I'm doing and the tension around it just dissipates.
Yes.
And the body, the mind, everything connects and just goes,
Yes. Right.
yeah. And but the quality of what you're trying to do when you leave, the quality that comes from after that is beyond whatever could have been if you made yourself push on through.
That's right. Yes.
It never would have that depth and feeling and I know it's quite funny me saying about quality all the time, because
Yeah.
that was one of the things that came up in the audio, was what was important to me was quality.
That's right.
I just realized there I am chatting away about quality and that yeah, that is in my body keys.
That's right. Very prominently, many times over. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there it was. It just showed up then in my words.
Mm. There's a gravitas to what you just shared. You know, you can feel it. There's a pace to it as well. I get the sense, based on my experience and even just kind of the reverence of what you just described, this whole thing is rooted in a field of trust.
Yeah.
You know, um, our greatest work in life, regardless of type, personality type, human design type, body keys profile, regardless of any other factor, the human struggle is to surrender. Our greatest work is to surrender to a story that's greater than the one that we could dream up, to surrender to hands that are larger than our own and more capable, right? To surrender to a story that exceeds our capacity to understand, let alone, strategize. So if we're surrendering, then what we're really doing is we're trusting into the flow of life, and we're trusting that if we relax and allow life to do what it wishes through us, And by life, I'm talking about capital L life. I'm talking about the flow of spirit, and we all have different names for this,
Yeah.
but ultimately, if we can relax and allow that greater force to carry us, then we've got the whole story contained in that action. It's just that we're not so good at it. And we struggle to trust because we're afraid. So we've been taught to swim really hard upstream. And the joke of existence is that nothing we want is upstream. I would say the joke of like modern human existence is that nothing we want is upstream. So we're trusting into the flow. And the thing is, when we become stuck, all that's happened is that we've become disconnected from the movement, the natural movement of energy. So the most reasonable thing to do, if we're trusting in this deeper, story, the most natural thing to do is to scan until we identify the movement and then allow ourselves to move in that direction, trusting that whatever it is that we were working on, whether it was an email or a Facebook post, or a business proposal, it doesn't matter what it was. If we've hit a wall, it's time to redirect our attention to something that's moving, and then to allow ourselves to move and trust that in time, in the right time, our full attention will be returned to that thing if it matters.
Yeah. And that's intentional flow, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's a feeling forward from moment to moment to moment.
Yeah.
And that is a practice at first, because we've not done it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Flowing with intention means that we can choose which side of the riverbank we're on.
That's right. Yeah, I love that. There's so many different metaphors that we can apply here. I like to think of, are we going to swim upstream? Are we going to relax and let the stream take us? Which side of the riverbank? You've got these binary choices, which is brilliant because they're simple. They're so simple when we're dealing in binaries and this or that a child could understand them. And of course, we understand that life is infinitely more complex than binaries. But at the end of the day, when it comes to how we navigate our experience, I do believe that it is that simple. And Jill, even back in the day when we first met, when I was focused in other areas, but amazingly on similar themes, I was developing a system, a completely different system at the time, and it was known as the Forgotten Sense. And that was one of these systems that to this day I can still feel inside me. It will come to life when the time is right. I've had to shelve it, but it's still there. And the forgotten sense is the sense of feeling. It's the ability to feel, the ability to feel forward, the ability to feel for the distinction between a yes and a no. And this is something that I refer to as wayfinding. Wayfinding is the ability to orient ourselves in alignment with a yes, rather than beating our heads against the wall of no. And to feel for in many cases, I would even say in every case, the very physical distinctions, to learn how to read the physical signals that indicate whether we're stuck or moving, yes or no, red light or green light. Yeah, very binary. So that's another thing that the body keys really does serve. It puts you in contact with that part of yourself that feels and knows, and it gives you the tools to orient appropriately. And it gives you permission when you're hitting that wall and you recognize it. You're like, okay, there's no more energy to expend here. It's depleted. Life is no longer moving in this direction, even if I'm halfway through an email and I'd really like to finish it. So instead, I'll press pause. I won't delete it. I'll just press pause. It'll automatically save as a draft. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then I'll go and, for me, it'll be something simple like I'll light some incense because I need that nice smell in the room. Or I think I'll wash the dishes or vacuum because I need that very simple activity to turn my full attention to and just become absorbed in the sound and the feeling of vacuuming. And no one outside of me will ever know what I'm doing. And critical persons outside of me might say, you're supposed to finish that email, you're just procrastinating. But I know that I'm doing everything my body needs to catch its breath, to reconnect to the movement. That movement may take me right back to the email after I'm done. The movement might take me into feeding myself because maybe I forgot to. Who
Yeah.
knows? The movement might take me to the woods. I might disappear for a whole day and play with squirrels. You know, like
and and I love the playfulness of it.
it can be playful.
Mm. And another thing that you said to me, and I don't mind sharing with the group, was to get in my sandbox, build my sandcastle, and not worry about anybody else's sandcastle.
That's right.
And that's so important because we all have our own sandcastles.
That's right.
But when we start looking at other people's sandcastles, it's easy to say, oh, their sandcastle's better than mine there. Or I really like the design of that sandcastle. But we only see their facade of the sandcastle. We don't see what's behind it.
Right.
And we are what's behind our sandcastle.
That's it. And
And
that's what matters.
yeah, because when we're behind our sandcastle, we're not standing in front of somebody else's waving a flag.
That's right. That's right.
And that seems really important.
I believe it is too. I believe it's true for everyone. There are some of us who have this exclamation point next to the significance of what you've just described, and you're one of them. I mean, one of your gifts is originality. You know, there's nothing about you or what you create or how you show up that will feel like a copy and paste. You know, who Jill is who Jill is. And again, we're all individuals. We all have an individual expression of self. It's true that all of us are perfect in our originality, but within the context of the body keys, there are some of us who are designed to impact others through that originality. And unless that originality is allowed, it'll never happen. The impact can never be had until we relax into who we are and allow that unique voice to express itself.
Yeah. And we get lost in other people's voices.
Easily. Whether we're comparing ours to theirs and assuming that theirs is better, or critically looking around us at the behavior and the creations of others and saying, well, they need help. They need help, sorting that out, and this could be better, and I'm gonna fix that for you. And we're always, not always, it's very easy, and we're very, we have this tendency, I think, to involve ourselves in the affairs of others when really life just wants to sing its song through us. And our job is to learn how to allow that. And that's why I say it's all about surrender. I often think of each of us as an individual story, as a flute. Each of us is a flute, and life is this breath that just wants to sing through us. And too often in our attempts to sort life out one way or another, we're stopping the opposite end of that flute, so it can't move and it can't make music. Yeah. So we end up in this dull space of, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? What's happening?
Wow, I love that. The flute. That is the most beautiful expression.
We are vessels, right?
Yeah, we are. I will have a quick check to see what questions we've got. This is the thing, I get so engrossed in the conversation that even if Facebook will show me, Carolyn's joined us as well, and Cindy's joined us.
Thank you so much for everyone for joining us. This is very, very fun.
Yeah, right. So Karen said yesterday morning she didn't make her bed after she got up, but knew it was because she was going to crawl back in.
Yeah.
Feeling. So what? I tell you, I'm going to let you read this in entirety. But she said it was an inner voice from childhood calling her lazy and therefore not good enough. But that's all about, again, that self-forgiveness.
Yes.
That it's not lazy. it's actually answering what the body knows it needs.
Yes. In a case like this, there's a body key known as the body key of nurture. And this is about self-nurture. And the body key of nurture serves the stuckness pattern of discord. So in these cases, the relational energies that tend to upset and confuse us are often very well served through simple acts of self-nurture, whether it's crawling back into bed and cuddling under the covers, or taking a bath and surrounding yourself with the warmth of the water and maybe some essential oils or bath salts. It's so much more than self-care in a case like this.
It is, isn't it?
It's protective. It's the body's way of returning to a sense of comfort and safety.
Yeah.
And from that place, we regain our ground, we come back into our own feet, and we catch our breath and remember, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. And then we can move forward from there with the confidence that was not available to us before we crawled back into bed.
Yeah. And Donna is with us as well. She said good morning, and she loves this.
Yay.
And Karen has also said, I believe sincerely that our bodies and minds lead us in directions that feel intrinsic. I also know that the world is full of other humans who believe they know what's best for us. And we'll try and point that out for us.
Yep.
And her conundrum is how to ignore the others while validating our own intrinsic truth.
Well, that's a great question, actually. I was just reading about this morning.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm sure that some of our listeners are familiar with David Hawkins. I'm a huge fan of the work of David Hawkins. He developed the map of consciousness. He's written books like Power versus Force and Truth versus Falsehood. And he addresses these sort of things. And I really appreciate the way he addresses it. This morning I was reading about guilt. And I was reading about how the feeling of guilt elicits the experience of guilt. And how guilt begets guilt. And this has certainly been true in my own experience. But what it indicates is that the quality of our inner experience affects and impacts and ultimately even cultivates the quality of our external experience. So as we address these layers of disallowing of the self, these layers of guilt, and these layers, and by the way, each of the stuckness patterns that we learn about in the body keys introduces some of these layers. For instance, one of yours, Jill, I believe was, why don't I pull it up real quick? Yeah, it was blame. There was a fun one, self-blame. Remember that one?
Yeah.
We have these ways of being at odds with ourselves, and so the world outside of us is at odds with us too. But as we release that, right, the body key is about releasing the tension, coming back to relaxation. The quality of our energy, our frequency actually uplifts. And so I believe that in time we'll experience that outward aggression less and less frequently because we're not calling for it. It's like, the transmitter of our energetic state is no longer putting out the request for more guilt, or blame, or any of these. So it's true. I actually don't think we need to combat those voices at all. We just need to get very, very good at hearing and honoring our own voice, our own knowing. And we get to do that now as adults. That's the thing is, the original program was written when we were too young. We believed what we were told. And David Hawkins talks about this too. He refers to it as innocence. And I love the word innocence. You can think of a computer, and a computer has hardware and it has software. And the hardware is the physical bits and pieces of the computer. The hardware, those metal pieces and those wires, perfectly innocent. It's pure, it's pristine. It will do whatever it's told by the software. Back in the day when we used CDs, you'd put a CD into the computer, and whatever game or music or program that CD contained would then play perfectly on the screen. Right? Because the hardware is innocent, it will do exactly what it's told. And that's true of all of us. Consciousness itself is the hardware. It's perfect, it's innocent, it's pristine, it's unharmed by any software you ever put in it. You could put the worst piece of software in your computer, and the moment you take that CD out, you can put a new CD in and reprogram.
Yeah.
Those of you who know computers really well and programming all that stuff, don't get too technical with me here, because like it's like, well, technically, but the hardware itself is
Yeah.
pure, and so are we. We get to reprogram, and now as adults, we get to turn our eye inward, and we get to begin to audit the programs that are playing.
So
kick out the ones that don't work.
Yeah, and
Replace
reclaim that innocence.
Yes, reclaim that innocence. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just
Ooh,
throw.
I love that. That phrase in and of itself is so powerful.
Yeah. And it's right there for us to reclaim, isn't it?
It is always immediate, obvious, and available. I think I may have mentioned that to you in your recording as well, that so much of what we can learn through the body keys is not revelatory so much as it is confirming and permissive. It reminds us of things we've always known. And what's fascinating about the way that we tend to work is that what's most obvious to us is precisely the thing that we tend to be most blind to. It's as if it's so close we can't see it.
Yeah.
And that's the truth of our own nature too. We know ourselves so well that we forget ourselves. It doesn't make sense logically. That's why we need these, these systems, at least for a period of time, to remind us of what's true. Ultimately, though, as we get better and better at applying what we're learning here and ultimately relaxing into what's natural, you don't need any outside help. You don't need human design. You don't need Tim. You don't need any of these support systems, because who you are is always enough and always has been. It's just been this process of remembering.
And do you notice when you ask someone the question, who are you?
Big question, huh?
It is a big question, but there's usually this, like, the shutters come down.
Yeah.
I need to really think about that.
Yeah.
But do we really need to think?
No.
We can feel that answer, can't we?
Yeah. I think when you feel that answer enough, you become it. And when you become it, who's going to ask the question? They're looking right at the answer.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's funny how we search for that answer all the time. And it's like, do this to discover who you are.
Maybe it's the wrong question, huh?
Yeah, maybe it is. And then when people say, who do you want to be? Who do you want to show up as? Well, surely that's just the you that's there.
That's right. That's the value of the question. That question in particular is hilarious to me. It always has been. The reason it's helpful, the only reason you can answer it, is because you already are that thing you wish to be. You've already seen it happening. You've seen it inside of yourself. You've seen it in the world around you as these mirrors of experience, and other people show it to you over and over and over again. You are this confident giant of a being. You are beautiful. And, Jill, in your case, yes, you are original. You have clarity, and this vibrancy screams out of your being when you are relaxed. These are some of your gifts. It's the most natural thing in the world. The question of who you are is answered intuitively.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, we've interacted for quite a number of years now.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we've actually talked in person.
Remarkable.
And I am always so conscious of you. I mean, you're in New York now, aren't you?
Yeah.
And, I'm here in Wales, and I'm always completely conscious of your presence. And I mean, I've talked about the the Party of Nine, which almost feels like that exploration to the inner self
Yes.
was like leading to the body keys.
Absolutely. Yes. It was a playful introduction.
I see it, I feel it. And, and I learned so much about myself in that.
We're so lucky, right? I mean, that was just a game, but
Yeah,
we met through that game, you know, and you're right that life has continued to happen for years since, and here we are, you
yeah,
know, and we'll continue, you know, we'll continue to be surprised by these opportunities and these recognitions and the sharing.
yeah. And I know I described you of the body keys when, and it is something that, oh, you just keep going back and finding new gold and beautiful jewels within it. And I said to you, it was like sitting in a big comfy armchair on a cold winter day in front of the fire.
That.
But it wasn't that place of sitting in front of the fire. It was the comfort that was within of coming home to the internal self, that
Mm,
innocence that you speak about. It was that wrapped around me.
it's remarkable. You get to revisit that place as often as you wish
Yeah,
until there's nothing left to do. That's the whole story.
yeah. But it's an it, but it's such a beautiful, forgiving, loving journey.
Yes.
There is nothing harsh. There is no punishment. It's
Mm,
beautiful and kind.
yes.
And that's, I'm looking, I'm trying to keep up as well. Oh, Nina said she's read all the books you mentioned.
All
Um,
right.
yeah, she said that loved him and his work and uses it in her life and work. And Karen has said that the two of us are cute and special.
Oh, yay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. We're just having fun. Like we're having fun because, as Jill mentioned, this is our first opportunity, the first opportunity we've taken to meet face to face in a space like this.
Yeah,
After all this time of communicating on a deep heart level, right?
yeah,
So this is a momentous occasion for us. But the fact that we also have this opportunity to include all of you with us,
yeah,
um, that is special too. You know, so you're picking up on the energy of enjoyment that we have with one another. But you know, I'm sure that I speak for you too, Jill, when I say that there is a distinct awareness that we are joined by all of these other hearts that we
yeah,
get that we get to serve through the sharing of what is a deep respect and great love for one another, and now also for all of you. So it is chills as I say that. So that's like total truth right there. You know, it's
yeah,
it's a really wonderful thing that we got to have this conversation. And I have to say, I didn't get to at the start, but I wish to. I have to say how privileged I am to be included. You know, I don't promote myself at all anymore. I don't advertise. I don't market at all.
no,
Uh, I have become completely dependent upon these, you know, surprising invitations. You know, and whatever it was that prompted Jill to invite me to this moment was in and of itself magic. And the fact that we're here together right now, thank God, what a beautiful gift.
yeah,
You know, and we all get to move into our day from this point forward, well served by the yumminess of this conversation.
yeah,
That's better than any amount of advertising or marketing could have ever gotten me, you know, and I know because I've done it professionally for years, you know, like
Yeah.
we're not doing it that way anymore. So I feel just filled with wonder, I think, by the pure joy of this conversation. So thank all of you, and you especially, Jill.
Yeah. Because yes, you were, that was your career, wasn't it? As a I mean, you had a successful business as a marketing person.
That's right. I was involved in business development, and during that period of time, I was focused in all of these areas: content management. I was a content strategist for a few years, um, marketing and advertising, um, down to, you know, the what other people might find boring end of, you know, logistics and all of these sort of things. I love business. I do. I love contribution. And this is where I get excited about the link between what we've been discussing today, and I think where this group is often focused. It's that each one of us is here for a reason. We have something powerful to contribute. We have impact. We have impact in our presence, and we have impact in whatever it is that we create and express. These things are important. It's necessary to share these things in a way that is aligned with our spirit. And what's so sad to me is that so many people with so much wealth to give get stuck and lost in the question of how.
Yeah.
And there's all these strategies and all these voices telling them.
Yeah.
And they work so hard to do so well. And some of us make it. But ultimately, these artificial means of delivery can't sustain. You know, whether you run out of advertising funds or you just don't have the energy to create as readily and as often as you need to, you know, accommodate your social media marketing schedule, whatever the case may be. There is an easier way. There is a more beautiful way. There is a way that connects to the essence of who you are. And so, you know, the body keys is one little gift that I have to share. But beyond that, we all have a greater work to do, I think. And I love that I still get to serve that. It's almost like all the experience that I had on one octave back in the day is now up here on a new octave. And I'm doing the same work, but it's singing at a higher frequency.
Yeah. And I mean, I know I upset some people when they say, you know, you've got to market this way, you've got to have these strategies. And I say, no, that doesn't work for me. And they can't understand it.
Yeah. Well, it's not really it's not been offered as an option in today's world. You know, if there is something better than or different even than marketing, it doesn't exist yet. We actually have to bring it to life. This is work that I'm doing with some other friends in separate projects as well. I sincerely believe that marketing is old hat, that it's the hard way, and that there is something much easier and much more authentic. And to me, that's what matters most.
Yeah.
Effortless and authentic. What does that look like? What do we call it? I have a friend who calls it unmarketing. I quite like that. You know, I have another friend who, as a result of our conversations, has begun to refer to it as inside out marketing. Also love that, right? We get to be creative. We get to tap that part of ourselves that knows, that part of ourselves that is pure and authentic and innocent and has wells of beauty to deliver. And then we get to become creative about how it happens. Yeah, I think we're really seeing that. I think we're seeing it unfold now on a global level in ways that we've never seen before 2020. And it's been a weird year, but it's certainly also been a transitionary year. And I don't know what's coming next, but I know that those of us who are paying attention to the inner world, rather than getting wrapped up in the drama of what's happening around us, those of us focused on the inner world, I think we're here to bring something else to life, something quite a bit different from what we've known. And that's going to take courage, and it's going to take creativity, and it's going to take persistence, and it's going to take being fully rooted in the truth of who we are.
Yeah. That's the absolute truth there. And Karen has said, Tim, as soon as COVID allows us to travel more freely and commune with others, I'm going to make an effort to drive at least halfway to meet you for tea.
Deal. Yeah. Yeah, that's long past due as well.
Yeah. It's just, I can't drive to be there with you.
I was just going to make a joke about that. I'm like, we can meet halfway through the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a shame. Carolyn loves unmarketing and inside out marketing.
Yeah, right. There's something to it. There's
Yeah.
something there. All of us know it intuitively. We just have to discover it and understand what it means. It'll probably mean something a little different for each of us, but man, hey,
Yeah.
that's maybe another conversation we have down the line and we can
Yeah.
explore it together.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And Tim, will you drop into the comments after and leave your contact details, how
Absolutely.
people can get in touch with you?
Happily. I'll also
Um,
respond to any comments that are waiting.
So if you know there are any questions, and I know there's some people that couldn't make it for the live, that they're going to be watching on the replay. So, any questions, I know you will answer the questions.
Yeah. Well, I'll at least respond to them.
Yes. Yeah, that's different, isn't it? Responding.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim will respond.
Yeah, it will be my pleasure.
Karen said some call it attraction rather than promotion. Mind,
Oh yeah.
there are a lot of words coming out.
Yes. I
And
think we
then
can circle back to
when you look into it, it's still the same underneath.
Mhm.
So it's a new headline with all the same marketing underneath it. So yeah, we have to be careful of that one. Anyway, we're going to stop the live streaming now, and thank you everybody for joining. Nina said it was really interesting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, all of you.
Yes, thank you for being with us, and thank you to everybody who watches later. Thank you so much. So it's bye from us.
Goodbye for now.
So that's the